And we are live. Welcome to another very special webinar hosted by CFO Connect. This month, we are talking about the US expansion as a European company. I'm here with three great speakers, and it happens to have that we actually are all based in very distinct locations. So it is quite on theme for today. So let's start with Corinne. Where are you calling in from?
Yeah, I'm calling in from London.
Beautiful. Yujin?
I'm calling from Jackson, Wyoming, in the Midwest.
Okay. Okay. You moved since our last call.
Usually I'm in the Bay Area, but we have a conference this week, and so it's beautiful outside, and I'm very excited to be here. So awesome.
Perfect. And Olivier?
Yeah, calling from Tel Aviv, Israel.
Nice. So yeah, very, very diverse locations, and I'm calling in from Berlin. Also, our community is global, so please drop in the chat where you are calling in from. Usually we see quite a nice set of cities across the world. So please let us know where you're tuning in from. And while you do that, I'm really happy to have this webinar hosted. And so I'll give you a bit of context about CFO Connect. Also, this webinar is in partnership with Deel. So we'll be talking about them as well. So what I will do, so a bit about CFO Connect. CFO Connect is a global community of finance leaders. It's a private network. We have over 10,000 members in the community. We host events like these. We have workshops. We put on reports and white papers to help finance professionals be better at their jobs. We have a private Slack group also that's reserved for CFOs. And we curate content so that you can really be the best finance leader you can. And CFO Connect is sponsored by Spendesk, which is a 7-in-1 spend management platform built and designed for the modern finance people. It helps finance stay in complete control and have visibility over everything that is spend related. Sorry about that. So this webinar is also in partnership with our friends at Deel, which is a global HR and payroll platform designed to simplify international workforce management for finance professionals. Deel helps you hire and manage employees and contractors globally, ensuring compliance and reducing overhead. It also streamlines onboarding, payments, and compliance across over 110 companies. And for finance teams, Deel centralizes payroll data, offers seamless integration with your systems, and provides comprehensive reporting. Through our compliance hub, they actively proactively monitor regulatory changes to keep your operations compliant. So you can check out Deel. We will also share a link in the chat so you can learn more about that. So now that you know who's hosting the webinar, let's talk about a bit of the agenda. The agenda is very simple. After this, we're going to intro the speakers so you can get to know them, their background, their experience, and why they know what they're talking about today. Then we'll have a very open, informal roundtable discussion about how to expand to the US, what are some tips and tricks, what are things to avoid, etc. And then, of course, we want this to be as interactive as possible. So we will also be hosting your questions at the end. So with that in place, I will hand the mic over to Yujin. We have around 50 people now who've been tuning in. And Yujin, I'll let you kick things off. We also have a poll, so let me know when you want me to run the poll, and enjoy.
Yeah. Why don't we can run the poll now and let get the data during the intros, and then
Sounds good.
Get a sense of where folks are or when folks are thinking about the U.S. expansion. So I'll kick things off, and then I'll hand over the baton virtually to Corinne and to Olivier. But my name is Yujin. I'm an operating partner at BAM Elevate. We are the private investment group of 𝐷𝐸 Asset Management, a multi-strategy hedge fund based in headquartered in Chicago, but with offices globally, including London, New York, and elsewhere. And I focus a lot of my time on helping the portfolio. We focus more on late stage, probably a Series D to pre-IPO investment, and helping them with go-to-market, and also finding ways to partner with BAM through a variety of analytics and resources that we have built out here. And prior to that, I worked at Signal Fire, an early stage VC fund known for a very data science kind of analytical approach to investing. And then prior to that was the first market development hire at Andreessen Horowitz, a firm I think many of you have heard about. It's really grown a lot the last decade or so. But yeah, no, very excited to see everyone here today. And then, just for disclosure, Deel is one of our portfolio companies. Shout out to Sarah Van Sickle and Noah Upsfeld of that team who have helped bring this all together. And definitely a company, if you're interested on the payroll, on the operational side to look into. Obviously, I'm biased, so you can't trust anything I say, but still, just putting out a shout out. Next up, Corinne, I think would love for you to provide an intro. Oh, and then one question we wanted to ask for the speakers, just to warm things up. I know folks are coming from all over. Is along with your professional bio, if you could share a personal memory from childhood that's something memorable, funny, or unusual, just to personalize things a little bit. Why don't you guys go first, and I'll round out, finish up the intros afterwards. So, but Corinne, take it away. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So, hi, everyone. My name is Corinne. I think a little bit like most people in the audience, I am a qualified accountant by training. I trained with KPMG. I then moved into the tech space. I've been in the tech space for the last 12 years, mainly focused on commercial finance roles. I love fundraising. I love M&A, and that's my key focus. Beginning of last year, I started up my own company, 𝐸𝐞𝐵 Financial, and I focus on two core things. So one is I do financial due diligence for investors. So I do it for British Patient Capital, which is one of the largest government funds, Ananda, Hardcore, 24 Haymarket, Octopus Ventures. And then on the other side, I work with companies who are either fundraising or going through M&A. So I build financial models, investor decks, valuation models, data rooms, and help with the overall kind of go-to-market. And in my career, I've raised over 300 million for companies I have worked for or worked with from a fundraising standpoint. Interesting fact about myself. So I guess I grew up in Scotland. I grew up in Aberdeen, but I have some kind of like weird Canadian American accent going on. And I can only put it down to the fact that I grew up watching Johnny Bravo and the Powerpuff Girls on Nickelodeon. And that was my childhood. So that is how I got the accent. But looking forward to this. Thanks very much.
Awesome. We'll bring that back somehow. So, Olivia, please. Yeah.
Yeah, so very nice to meet you all. My name is Olivier. Actually, global head of expansion at Deel. I actually have a couple of hats, but when I joined the company 2.5 years ago, in a 5-year company, it's a lot. It's a lot of time. As I joined really prior to the Series C funding. I was, I think, employee 74, 75, or today above 4,000 employees. But most interestingly, I was actually hired really to look after our expansion outside of the US. So I really helped Deel expand into LATAM, into Europe, into APAC. Been in the tech industry for 20 plus years. Started my career doing management consultancy for a big German bank called 𝐲𝐶𝐵. And I know Yujin, you asked me about a fun fact. So here's my fun fact.
Yeah.
After university, I studied at the University of Paris. First job was actually for 𝐲𝐶𝐵. And when I actually went for the interview, I was actually offered to go to Frankfurt or Barcelona. I'd actually decided to go Barcelona just because of the weather. Challenge for me was, I was actually supposed to have an interview, was potentially, like I would say, a Spanish leader working for 𝐲𝐶𝐵. So for 3 days, I arrived prior to the interview, and I started like really buying all kinds of business magazines in order to improve my Spanish prior to the interview. And I really worked really hard to get ready, to have this like Spanish interview. And then when I get there, the guy that interviews me was actually a German guy that speaks no word of Spanish, and interview in English. So that's my fun fact. So that was my first like expansion into first role.
Yeah.
So great experience, great memory as well.
Yeah, and there's probably a good lesson there. Like you never know what you're going to expect, so you got to be prepared for everything and anything. So, awesome. And then I'll just round it out. This might be familiar to folks in Europe, but I actually grew up in a family business. My mom, when I was in second grade, not like 7 or 8, started a Kumon. I don't know if you're familiar. It's like an after-school math enrichment program, right? And then that became our family business. We added like writing and other topic areas. And then we, United States, I think, I'm sure you guys are familiar. There's a big test in high school called the SAT test. It's like everyone's got to take it. They took it away for a few years. Now they brought it back, right? So we provide a SAT prep. And so literally my entire life until college was like involved somehow here. And then when I went to college, I would come back in the summer to do an internship, and then I would teach SAT math after we would do like classes at like 6 to 10 p.m. Just after work, so I could do both, right? The reason why I tell you that is, and I think those of you who ever taught kids before, particularly high school kids, I think you'll realize it is the best sales training, because you have an audience that doesn't want to be there. You still have to teach them, and you've got to make the material interesting, and you've really got to be on their toes, because the moment you slip, you lose them. And so it's just something where like, we go through all these kinds of training and prep, but try to teach a bunch of high school kids who don't want to be there. It's the best. It's like, it really refines you got to have high energy and be ready to go. So, but with that, perfect segue into talking about the US market. And I think I looked at the poll, something like over 40% of you are expanding now. So this is a very hot and relevant topic. And so for today, we're going to cover probably 3 or 4 broad macro themes and drill into each of them, and then open it up to Q&A to the audience. So folks online, don't be shy. I'm monitoring a chat. It's literally right in front of me. Someone said last like chocolates. I do agree. I do love chocolate. So just keep, don't be shy and kind of share your questions and comments as well. But I think the probably macro themes here are just strategy. Like, why should you even think about the US market? When is it the right time? I think there's a lot of issues of people trying to expand too early or too late. And there's just some indicators. We have some frameworks and concepts to share around how to determine when you're ready. Secondly, a little more tactically on operations and impact, or actually the second one's actually more on the benefits of being United States, moving your team. How do you actually do that? What's the actual tactical steps in thinking about that? How to also recognize that, and just as an American, I can tell you, the United States isn't just one big blob. It's 50 different states that are very different and very diverse. And so how do you think about each one correctly and going after the right segments from there? Next one's more on operations and impact. Like, how do you actually manage from a different country? Should you have founders come out there? What are the kind of technical details of each state and their regulations and rules, and making sure abiding by them carefully? And then last one's hire, and then the very last one's really around hiring, just in terms of who are the people, what are the profiles you should look for to be successful. So to start off on strategy, and I think we have a good question. Someone shared from Karthik, I think before before the event, mid-market enterprise expansion outside the United States, is that even possible? And so maybe to start, the basics here, and we'll move very quickly here, is around like, hey, what are the key indicators or metrics a company should evaluate to determine if the US is right for them? When is the right timing? And I think, Olivier, you have some very strong thoughts here. But you want to maybe kick off the discussion? That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's not a big surprise. I mean, the U.S. it's the biggest economy. It's the first GDP, first of all, and so that's very interesting, like, to look at. But exactly what you said, Yujin, it might be obviously the biggest market and the biggest TAM, but let's not forget it's as well like 50 different states. So the aggregated value of this makes it like obviously like the biggest market, but what obviously potentially preparing your expansion, I think there's like 2 big criteria. The first one is obviously externally, look at your market. I mean, what's the TAM? What are you looking actually to sell from a product and services standpoint? How do you differentiate yourself from your competition? So what's your competitive, because actually the US is a very competitive market overall from a product and services standpoint. If you look at IT, if you look at HR, it's no surprise, it's a very competitive one. So obviously by planning, first of all, understand if what you're doing has an added value compared to your competition. Look at if you're going to a saturated market, or if you really have like a unique opportunity, like ready to go to market. That's the first angle to this. The second one is, are you ready for it? Do you have the right people internally? You have the right process, and are you really ready to scale? Because you cannot just enter or plan a US expansion without having people in the US. This is really not something we would actually advise you to do. So the second question is, do you need like a local branch, a local subsidiary in which that you're going to be? But the reality, first of all, you need to be in the US. You need to have US talents that have experience selling to the US in order for you like to be, I would say, set for success. This is my take. So externally and internally, first of all, balance if you're ready to do it. And if the balance is right, then it might be obviously the right time for you to get into this.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great framework. It's almost like, I mean, you all have business plans or strategies around your own home countries. You need to take that same level of rigor and research when you expand to the U.S. Actually, Corinne, I think you, or Corinne, you'd have a unique perspective here around what are investors looking for, or when they expand in the United States, are there certain criteria or certain kind of milestones that that they're looking for in terms to invest money for countries looking to expand out here?
Yeah, I would say, like, I've worked at and with 5 companies who have expanded into the US. 2 I worked at, and 3 were more from like a fundraising perspective. One of the big things is, like, for all of them, they had organic growth of some sort in the US, i.e. they'd won a client off their own kind of like sales team, either based in the UK or across Europe. And that was the kind of trigger point of like, okay, there's a US market available for us. And at that point as well, they were also about to undergo kind of fundraising rounds. And that's when it becomes quite attractive, because you already have a proof point or a couple of proof points in that market to then go out and say, all right, now we're really going to like roll out. And the use of proceeds here from a fundraising perspective is to really kind of like push into these new territories or this new geography. I'd say one thing just to be mindful of, though, is sometimes some companies are like, we've got clients here, we've got clients here, and there's quite a big kind of international footprint. Like, I am a big fan of winning in your own backyard first, i.e. getting your home country kind of nailed down, and then being like, right, now that we have all the proof points, expand from there. And, it's no lie, the check sizes are bigger in the US, not only from like, client, like, ACV or ARR or whatever, but also as well, like, the other thing to be mindful of that is the cost base is then bigger. So like, if you can get that, you win in your backyard, you get those organic kind of proof points, and then you say, right, now we will invest, and now we'll begin to scale up and scale out in the US.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. Just in terms of like having a strong home base, and I think also implied in both your answers is, and then for the audience's sake, be very specific on which segment or demographic or group you're going after. You don't want to be, you can waste a lot of money and time if it's not well clean. Like, you're going after a certain size company in certain region, certain sub vertical, not even industry, but sub vertical, so that you can concentrate all your energy on time, go to market channel to be successful. Otherwise, it can be kind of diluted very, very quickly. So next up here, actually, there's a good question from Carlos also. Are there any, have you maybe through your experiences or on the client side, faced any financial barriers a European business has faced when entering the US market? So is there maybe a certain, maybe surprise expense buckets or categories of budget that you wouldn't think but come up unexpectedly, and then you've got to really overinvest to make sure you're well capitalized?
The US always surprises me just how expensive it is from like a hiring perspective. I guess the actual physical kind of operational piece is a well-trodden path, and there's different providers out there who can help in terms of like setting up a subsidiary, like getting the kind of legals in place, like getting all the sort of like cookie cutter templates and things like that in place. I think for me, I'm always just surprised, particularly at US salespeople, at how expensive it is. And I know there's a question also as well in the chat around the kind of finding sales individuals out there. And I've again, my experience has always been, it's worked really well to send someone from your home country out to the US and then try and build out from there, rather than sort of hiring cold from your home base and then trying to scale out a team out there. But yeah, I'm always surprised by the cost of particularly sales.
Yeah, I think overall, obviously, if you were to compare Europe to the US, yes, there's an element of cost, of course, I think. But first of all, I mean, the cost of living, we're always thinking about, first of all, what's the US? Are you comparing New York? Are you comparing San Francisco? Are you looking are you looking at Arizona? Listen, the ranges are very diverse, right? Whether you go San Francisco, New York, or you go in the Midwest. you can find very different answers to your questions. But I think what surprises me actually is speaking about employment cost, it's actually not only like the salary piece, it's actually the benefits piece, because the model is very different in Europe. Most of the European economies are actually built with what we call the safety net, where government like supports most of your cost. In the US, it's completely the opposite, is everything private. And therefore, the benefits aspect of employment is critical in actually attracting your key talents. And this is the piece that sometimes people don't really understand while going to the US, and sometimes in the bucket of the budget which is allocated to benefits per employee sometimes, well, they don't understand in their first expansion why it's actually so high and why is it so critical for them to attract talents. I think so that piece sometimes is really unprepared. So this is why you really need to work with experts to help you in building your comp and benefit strategy going to the US, because otherwise you'll simply find no talent.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We are the only, I think, country that has employer-based compensation or responsibility on like healthcare and other benefits, and it becomes like a recruiting factor. If you don't match up, you're kind of just not even considered a candidate, and so couldn't agree more. And then on the regional side, it varies dramatically. I've heard, just for the sake of the audience, if you are expanding out here, like really the coastal cities are very expensive. I mean, unless you have a very high-priced product and you have some kind of rationale for doing that, maybe you have an engineering team or something, I would be very wary of them. The hubs I've heard are around Nashville, Utah, Salt Lake City in particular. If you want to think off maybe more Midwest, very good talent that is used to working remotely, but much more reasonable in terms of expectation and cost. So, but very be wary, I think, of the main hub. I mean, we all love to go to those cities; they're fun to visit, but like it's very expensive. So, excellent. I think we covered some of this already, but we also want to talk about the benefits of being in the United States. Maybe just a few minutes here, or moving your team out to US or certain cities in the US. Maybe for both of you, are there certain success stories? Are there certain kind of advantages or like positive benefits you've seen for certain companies or clients that have moved out here and really taken off? I think it would be benefit just to kind of give some positivity to the audience around if you do it right, this can be a real big boon to your business.
Sure.
Maybe Olivier, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I can start. I mean, we at Deel were lucky. I mean, I as well. I advise like a couple of tech funders like in their US expansion, and I can say that. I mean, no longer. I mean, earlier this morning I was actually discussing with a French funder, build a nice company, B2B SaaS, already reached $1 million ARR. Young company, less than a year, so really on the right path, like for growth. Looking to reach to actually raise their Series A. Their strategy was, well, in order to do this is, we're going to first of all like open up our C Corp in the US. We're moving the founders team to San Francisco, and then we will start then discussions on raising as a US company based. And that changes everything, by the way. Yes, we don't have yet the outcome of the raise, but the reality is, and I think Corinne touched on this as well, you obviously have access to bigger capital, bigger checks. And when you obviously are if you have at least a subsidiary or you are incorporated in the US, you have as well the ability to benefit from US funding. Many US investors are not allowed actually to invest in foreign companies. Sometimes some would do it actually in the form of an SPV as an exception going into, I would say, European market or even Israel in the tech nation. But the reality is most of them are keen to actually to invest into, US companies for tax purposes. And that is sometimes something we don't really pursue from the outside. So I think this is like big. So the market access and the access to investors is big. The ability to participate, obviously, to meetups, to networking events, to scale-ups, and all of this is only possible if you're actually, really on-site in the US. And from that perspective, I think it's very valuable to be really on-site in the US.
Yeah, excellent.
I would 100% agree with that. I would say, just to build on that, I find the US just such a transactional market as well. Things just move quicker. Things are a lot more dynamic. As you say, check sizes are bigger. And so from a fundraising perspective, things move faster in terms of like from first conversations through to closing. There's also a higher risk appetite. So for those that are in the VC space, which is a is meant to come with a certain risk characteristic to it, there's that appetite in the US, whereas I sometimes find in the UK and Europe, it's a little bit slower. The risk appetite is lower despite being a VC kind of like asset class. Like there's just things which, things move just at a different kind of dynamic or cadence or pace, which you don't necessarily see, in the US, which is a lot more, faster, speedier.
Yeah, I would also add, for those in the audience, if you have particularly a high-tech product that requires like top engineering, data science, what have you, and I know this is a refrain, but move to the Bay Area. I think the talent is still here. You've probably read stories of San Francisco falling apart. I go up, my office is there. It's not great, but like it's still like the hub, and you hear these stories. I mean, I'm going to sound a little dramatic, but where like literally you're here a week and like you'll find an engineer at a hackathon, you'll join a dinner and meet 3 angel investors along with an institutional. People are just very social. There's a lot of, the culture here is very like, want to share, collaborate. But I would advise folks to like do your diligence. There's a lot of like hucksters, a lot of BS, you just got to be very careful too. But the energy, it's still very vibrant here, particularly around the AI boom. And so, if you are working on something much more technical, engineering oriented, the Bay Area, and then I think New York would be the second place. I know I'm like literally contradicting what I just said on the sales piece, but if it is on the capital raising side of things, the Bay Area and New York are your 2 best bets. So awesome. Olivier, do you have anything else to add, or just I just saw you nodding there? So
no, I just want to comment on what Corinne said. I mean, I think there's a big difference in terms of the risk culture overall. So we didn't speak. We spoke a little bit about the investors, but the reality is that the American B2B or the American consumer has an appetite for risk, which is very different than what we know in Europe and specific. I mean, maybe a bit less in the UK. I think in the US, you're a bit more open, or a bit more has a higher appetite for risk. But for continental Europe, like France or the Benelux or Germany, for sure, very conservative. And things just move faster. So in the US, sometimes someone could just say, listen, you know what? You don't need a business plan. I like your story. Let's just do it. Let's just do it. And at the end of the day, that's their job. They're ready to invest. By the way, there was this book about, is it about the proportion of deals that you're going to make, or is it about the one big deal you want to make, right? So I think in the US, it's going to be the one big deal you need to make. Well, I mean, the European VCs will look at this in a very different way. It's going to be much of the proportion, right? So I think, the appetite for risk and that culture is so different. And that's really something to take into account as you move into the US as well, right?
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I think definitely on the funding side. And then even you'll meet like early adopter customers out here who are like, hey, maybe your roadmap isn't fully baked, or the thing isn't working out, isn't ready yet. They're willing to take a bet on you. They might have their own developers. They want to be on the cutting edge. Now they want to discount probably on price, and they want some concessions on that end, right? But they're willing to take a bet on you. Whereas I think in other maybe countries, like they're going to wait till it's really developed and ready. Whereas there are some customers and every industry has a different set. But they're willing to write a vendor check even earlier before you're even ready to go. So because they have such a pain point, they got to move on it. So awesome. And then just a reminder to the audience, you've got additional questions. Like Alina has been very active here, and then others. Just feel free to ask them as we continue our discussion. Next up, we've kind of talked about the benefits of going over come to the United States. We want to cover now more like the tactical operational side of things. Maybe the first one here is an option to explore moving founders or forming teams to US. How do we do it the right way? Are there certain pitfalls that companies face when moving here? And I think, Olivier, you had some kind of a framework or some advice here to share to kick things off.
Yes. So first of all, I mean, moving to the US, as we said, it's not about moving to the US, actually to moving to some states in the US. So first of all, take into account that you have 50 states. So now it's not really the discussion about East Coast, West Coast, Texas, Middle. I would say, first of all, there's the complexity of managing your move to a specific state in the US. With that comes, the specific compliance, issues, right? So because each state has its own rules, its own tax systems, And therefore, for you to comply, it's first of all something that you need to plan ahead. So you can just say, I'm moving to this without really knowing to which state you're going to land, and land either partially as small team members, the founders, and so on and so forth. So that's first of all something that you absolutely need to take into account. The second is, are you ready to do it from your pure like payroll and compliance perspective? With that, I mean, I would say lots of companies can actually help you with this, but you just need to plan ahead. We at Deel, by the way, this is what we do. So we help companies expand in different formats. Some would actually decide to incorporate in the US, in Delaware, having their C Corp. Some will then decide to move potentially their founders via an investor visa into the US. So that's normally like the first move that they do, because that's the easiest one at the very early stage if you're like a tech company into the US. And then second stage, you decide to either move teams from Europe or potentially like hire your local teams in the US. But here again, with the same context of how do you do this, by state, and how do you comply, with your with payroll and so on and so forth. Immigration piece is not the least. Okay, sometimes people think that it's true the US is super open, but it has its complexity. So I can tell you, I mean, we discuss and we help thousands of founders across the globe. Even though you have a company that is operating, I was giving you this example this morning of this company already with $1 million ARR going to the US, already their C Corp established. Well, the requirement is you need to have a strong business plan. It needs to go into a process. It will normally take you between like 3 to 4 months. So it's a process that you need to plan ahead. It doesn't happen overnight. And by the way, you can be rejected. You can get rejected if you make this wrong. You can get rejected, so you need to be ready for that. So this is why it's very important to do it like very proficiently with the right company, with the right lawyers, because otherwise the cost of failing here could be simply not you and be able to actually enter the US at all physically. So that's something that you really need to plan and do like the proper way. Yeah, that's for my recommendation. So again, I think the state is important, obviously payroll and compliance. It's something that you need to look ahead, and obviously immigration, specifically if you're moving foreign founders or team members, from outside.
Yeah, and then I think to add on, you've probably seen this from Deel side. The penalties could be substantial on the payroll. The U.S. tax system is not forgiving. They want to get paid. They want the things done right, and it can be quite aggressive. And so this is a situation where you don't want that black mark. You don't want that friction when you're starting out. You want to do it the right way. And again, not to promote Deel, but like they make that process, I think, a lot simpler, save a lot of time and hassle. So that makes it effective. Corinne, maybe you have some maybe advice or experiences from your portfolio companies in terms of expansion, if they've hit any financial penalties or made some mistakes, and what that costs them, and how can we help our audience avoid that going forward?
Yeah, I guess because most of the audience will be finance personnel. So like you have your spreadsheet, right, of like, this is what costs we've allocated in order to kind of expand into the US. And as I've said, like the most kind of successful expansions I've seen have come from like an organic sort of growth, i.e. we've won a couple of clients, or we have a bit of a foothold in that market, and now we will start to really kind of build that out and invest more heavily. Where I've seen it really work well is if you can get the right investor on board who then just is like, okay, you know what, I will intro you to this person, this person, this person, this person, sales. That's where I've seen like investors really kind of unlock that growth potential. And I've seen it particularly in 2 companies, both of whom had US VCs on their board, and they came on board because these companies had a bit of organic growth, and they were like, cool, here's our black book of everyone we know, and now we're going to just make all these intros. And that was just, I mean, that was just pouring fuel on the fire. And, that was where, I think that expansion is phenomenal.
Yeah. You remind me, and I think this was part of our prep. There's a great firm, crossover firm that's the United States and Europe, called Index Ventures. Mm-hmm. And they actually had a guide around for the European portfolio, how to expand the United States. And I know the operating team well. They have a very good reputation out here, but they've like systematized a lot of what you mentioned around everything from like software vendors to talk to how to think about your back end systems, your infrastructure, what kind of what laws or like regulations you got to be mindful of, because a lot of this is actually by state kind of the material. It's like repeatable, so they can like store that. and just make sure they can save time. So the right investor can help just smooth that process and make that entry a lot easier without cost or hassle. So next year, so I think a big question is, let's say you're here now, but then it's like, hey, how do I manage this distributed team? You may have some folks from your home country here. But the reality is you probably have US based personnel here. How do you manage them? And then, but then also, how do you try to minimize, I think, financial compliance risk with that distributed team? You want them to be flexible and moving fast, but you also don't want anyone, breaking any laws, right? So how do we think about that balance? And then Olivier, I think you've had some experience here as well, just in terms of helping some of the European clients make this transition.
Yeah. So first of all, of course, if you look at, well, there's many ways for you to actually hire, people in the US, which is probably like, it sounds great and open. At the same time, it becomes very complex if you're not compliant. But I would say the first thing is that, first of all, in the US, it's really okay for you to partner and actually hire your first team members as, I would say, independent contractors. This is something which is very common in the US. It's not a problem. You can actually hire independent contractors from, maybe to the exception of California, which is a bit more, is always a problem. But I would say outside of California, you still have 49 states, should be okay for you to hire your first team members as independent contractors. And so there's many ways, many mechanisms. So you can have them as contractors directly employed. You can leverage like a third party to do what we call the agency of record. So you hire them, the company will actually hire them on your behalf. You could move into the what we call the employee of records, using a third party like Deel to hire those employees, and then obviously do payroll and benefits. You could use what we call the PO model, which is like a co-employment. So once you have established your entity together with a partner in the US, you'll be like co-employed and then have this partner manage for you all things payroll and benefits. And obviously you could have once you reach like a certain, I would say, size and maturity, you can obviously just do it by yourself and you do like US payroll and benefits. But that's normally when you have at least about, I would say, 250, 300 employees in a given country like the US for you. So first of all, lots of opportunities or lots of options for you to hire. Good news, you can actually do variety of options, right? You could say for certain types of roles, I'm gonna be hiring contractors. For some others, I would have potentially like EOR and so on. So but the most important is that you need to really engage with local experts, right? So get advice, get support from experts. These one will enable you to pretty much get the full potential of the diversity of options, but really do it with experts, because otherwise the cost of non-compliance can be extremely high in the US. We don't see this enough. We've seen this on movies as well. We Europeans looking at the US you always see these movies where there's those big trials and then the damages comes in multi-billion-dollar liability. That's true. I think the cost of non-complying and legal actions can be unlimited, and therefore you need to really do this very carefully with experts.
Yeah, actually, Olivier, to that point, there's a question on the panel here. Can you use the EOR for sales hires too? And is it difficult to transfer from EOR to an own entity at a later date? Yeah,
you can do both actually. So that's normally how people do it. First of all, they prefer actually to use the employee of record model to start building their teams. And when they reach a certain level of maturity and so on and so forth, this is when they decide to transfer EOR actually more to a PO model, because then this is when they establish their own legal entity and they can transfer those employees in a co-employment model and then hire them as PO. And then when obviously they grow to a larger scale, this is when they decide really to manage them directly, doing a US payroll and benefits. Mm-hmm. So yes, you can, and happy to support. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and I'll make sure to connect you.
Awesome. I think additional resources there too. Corinne, maybe additional thoughts or advice here, just in terms of being careful around managing a distributed team and doing that effectively.
Yeah, so I've never managed a team personally in the US before, but I've set my previous company, I set us up in Abu Dhabi and Singapore and managed teams in those respective geographies. I think the main thing is sometimes when people are in other geographies, it's often quite easy to forget about each other and forget about the kind of day-to-day.
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate of face-to-face. So wherever possible, wherever you're doing sales meetings or corporate development or whatever it is, you try and collectively meet in a, middle country somewhere between those different geographies. And I'd say as well, like, again, having raised from, say, for instance, the Middle East, like, bringing those investors in with the first individual on the ground and being like, okay, you said you would make these introductions. We have this individual and we do daily check-ins. And, and then that becomes weekly once we've got a set of targets in place, but keeping everything, there's the quantifiable pieces of like having targets and making sure that people are kind of like managed appropriately. But then there's the qualitative piece as well, which is really beginning to understand the kind of nuances in the region and like how different things kind of play out and how long things actually take. So having that kind of balance of, let's hit our targets, but also at the same time being mindful of like, okay, well, actually, this may take a little bit longer, or this is how things are done here. But maintaining those touch points at all times, I think, is just critical. And for me, to begin with, it's always daily, then moves to weekly, stays weekly, and wherever possible, it's face-to-face.
Yeah. No, I think that definitely is right, just in terms of whether it's United States or just general remote team management, just having that consistency of communication. And then you got to mix in person or in person. You just got to do it now. Just because like people just feel neglected or left out, and then you have people going off doing different things outside of the strategy, and that causes a lot of challenges. The question panel here is very active. There's two here that are somewhat similar. Can we reasonably manage? This is a kind of follow into the topic we're covering now. Can we reasonably manage an overseas presence without a local U.S. branch? And then related to that I think it's a similar question. What are the biggest pitfalls for a 100% remote company based outside the U.S. that has no employees or contractors in the U.S.? So I guess to simplify the question, it's like, can you actually do this without hiring in the United States? Can you do it all remotely? Have you ever heard of that being successful? Or is it only for like certain edge cases? Curious for both of your perspectives here.
I guess, so there's different response. It depends actually on what you sell. So if you obviously are a tech company, and let's say you have established great presence in direct sales, from the internet, where you can easily really, generate, I would say, inbound traffic, book demos, and really have, I would say, like a couple of touch points before like getting a deal closed. One could argue you really need to be like physically in the US, and how much of this physical you need to be in, and how can you manage this outside of the time zone, and so on and so forth. I think first of all, it depends on what you sell. So if you're a tech company, I think we've seen cases of, let's say, Latin American tech companies going from Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, actually expanding into the US without being physically yet in the US, yet being in a time zone, yet being prepared by having potentially actually incorporated their C Corp in Delaware or sometimes in Miami for the LATAM, just normally where they like to land, but technically not having almost like anybody on the ground in the US, but really doing it from the time zone perspective. So we've seen cases like this. It might be good for a very, I would say, a good start, okay? But that's not exactly sustainable if the US is going to be like the strategic market you want to really grow and expand. So to start with, why not? Because you are in the same continent, in the same time zone. You may have culturally have already done some business in the US. You already have potentially some local partners you can actually rely on, but you can do that, but you can only do this in a very limited time. We highly recommend people to have at least a US head of expansion as the first person on the ground, at least to manage all things US. So that's the first thing. Can you just remind me, Yujin, the second question?
Oh yeah, kind of related. Are there biggest pitfalls for a 100% remote company that has no outside U.S. employees or contractors? Yeah.
Let me answer this from a Deel perspective. So first of all, the company was actually born in 2019, and when the first product was actually out, it was really like the beginning of COVID. So we as a company we completely thrived in being in lockdowns across the globe. So when I joined the company in March 2021, I was actually doing the expansion into LATAM, Europe, and actually into APAC. I had hundreds, and if not thousands, of interviews via Zoom and Google Meet. I've hired about 20 head of expansion from Mexico to Japan, without physically being in any of those countries at the time of the interview.
Yeah.
Something I've never done before, by the way. So it's possible. It requires a lot of things. It requires like good partners on the ground. So in this case, good headhunters. And I know there was a couple of questions of we're facing some challenges to hire like US salesperson and this and that state. How can we do it? Happy to connect offline. We can connect you to our ecosystem in each of the markets where we operate. We have tens of not hundreds of partners we work with to help you source like the right talents. So first of all, having the right talent on the ground, having good technology, good processes, right? To actually build a pipeline in candidate and really do this interview process as lean as possible. So you can do this and you can hire. Now, the big question is, what is the backfall of, being 100% remote and not hybrid and not face-to-face? I consider that as a company today, we are 4,000 employees. We were born, and I'd say we were born really remote as a company. And we managed up until 2 years ago to really operate 100% remotely. So I'm not saying this is easy for everybody, because sometimes people, first people on the job, you're out of school, you never work in, I would say, in a normal company, in the office, and you didn't really socialize at the coffee machine with people. And all of a sudden you have a first job, which is 100% remote. I can say, there's big chances for you to fail, right? But I would say for those that have experience, right, that have been working in companies, different companies in the workplace, all of a sudden now working for, remotely and accommodating pretty much their day-to-day with their personal life. A lot of the people actually see the great balance between working remotely from home and doing their job from home as well. So I think it depends. I agree, however, you need a physical touch point. So whether it's a weekly meeting, a monthly meeting, a quarterly meeting. At Deel, for example, we gather all of our sales teams globally twice in a year. In normal companies where people meet in the work every day, you do like a sales kickoff once in a year.
Yeah.
At Deel, we actually do this like twice in a year. We gather all of the people, and on top of that, we have quarterly and even like monthly gatherings. So that's our way to reconnect the people, physically. But it doesn't mean that they are forced to go on a Monday or on a Thursday to the office. People really do their job, from their most of the time from pretty much from anywhere they want. But I would say mostly from home or mostly from the customer side.
Yeah. And Corinne, you might have maybe interesting perspective here too, in terms of like it's probably possible to manage it remotely completely, but like you still need to intersperse probably your local team to meet physically, or even to visit the home country occasionally. Like it's a reverse kind of thing, right? Where you might not be in presence all the time there, but you still need them to like experience the local culture or local area for them to really understand the market, But I wonder if you have similar experiences or perspective there.
Yeah, I would say my experience has been in like B2B, enterprise SaaS, climate tech, and then deep tech, where deep tech is like quantum computing. And I'd say from like a quantum computing perspective, because of like national security and things like that, you need teams in the US who are US nationals who are going to scale that up. If it's something like B2B, SaaS, enterprise software, where I've seen it work well is where it's been like land and expand models with these large enterprises who have a global footprint and therefore have bought in the UK or bought across Europe and then sold then into or told their colleagues about this product in the US market, and then it's gained traction out there. And at that point is when typically companies I work with are like, oh, okay, we're also raising in the region as well. So actually, why don't we start to really kind of like build out that footprint from there? So like, as a finance person, I'm always like, cut costs. But I would say that, investing strategically in individuals but also just making sure that it's all kind of very like boxed as well. There are targets that have to be met, because where I have seen it gone wrong is like, there are people in the region and then they start to hire a couple of other people. And then before you know it, we've got this like ballooning team that, we're not quite sure who does what, and we don't meet, like regularly. And it then can kind of grow arms and legs. And then you end up with quite like a cost base somewhere that, is not necessarily returning some kind of ROI that you're anticipating.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Just in terms of like being thoughtful around expansion and then careful about it. Otherwise it can sprawl. So, We had an interesting question here, and this may be very specific. What are the best places to set up a SaaS B2B company selling to factory managers? And this is highly specific. Assuming this is not necessarily SF or New York City from Nicholas. I don't know if anyone has, we probably need a little research, but I don't know if anyone had experience here on the factory side. Maybe certain hubs. I'm trying to think like in the Midwest or kind of go where the market is, It's probably not the main hubs, but a little bit outside those, right?
I have no idea.
I'm thinking like Detroit for auto. Yeah, this is a very Nicholas. We'll come back to you on this one because I think this is one where there's certain hubs depending on which. Actually, you gotta want to target where your customers or where your verticals are, and you'll see clusters in the United States because it's such a diverse business environment. So, but appreciate the question and glad you're asking that. Here, I know we covered a lot today. Big topic that's been throughout this conversation is around hiring. What profiles to look for. What are the most critical rules that companies should prioritize when building the US team? And then Olivier, I think you had some specific rules that folks need to be concerned about or focused on. Do you want to share some hey, if you're going to do this now, who are your top 2 or 3 hires? How would you start?
Yeah, I think, again, it depends on obviously what you sell, but I would say from a tech perspective, if you're really going into this US expansion, first of all, get on the ground, ahead of expansion. Someone, that can come and has a very diverse background. I mean, he is someone that knows go-to-market, he knows how to sell, he knows how to build partnerships, he knows how to generate pipeline, he can do marketing, can be a face and voice of your company on the ground. This role is very strategic as your first role into the US. And obviously leverage someone that has a good track record so that he can potentially help you source good talents from his potentially previous experience or from his own network. So that's something which is very, very, very important for you. Second, and that's something we've done, by the way, ourselves, expanding to new markets. We have always first hired a head of expansion. As I say, I always call it like the sheep with the 5 legs, but the reality is that was so critical for us in any of the success of the markets that we had, simply because you need that diversity of experience. Second, do not neglect the power of scale up in VCs in the US. So if you have the ability to get intro into the large scale up, whether it's Techstars, whether it's YC, use that because this has a lot of power for you. Lots of intros, potentially access to funds, obviously lots of coaching and mentorship from founders and lots of support, which is being built. This is really unique. I'm not saying we don't have that across Europe and APAC, we do, but not in the dimension of the US. The US is really completely built for that. And we are lucky to be a YC company at Deel, and we see the benefits of being a YC company, getting access to portfolio, to funders, obviously to money. But at the end of the day, it's speed and access to customers, to investors, and so on and so forth. So never neglect that piece as well.
No, great. I think in many ways, it's like you're hiring the profile is like a good startup hire, right? And your first hire, you need someone who's very scrappy, who doesn't need a lot of resources, is always on the offense, being aggressive, because you're really starting with very little, right? So,
sure.
But they're out there and they're awesome. And Olivia, I think you must be one of them because you've been through this so many times, and they're awesome. It's just, but they're a very unique breed. You got to find them and get them, they're awesome when they work. So, is maybe a side question from the panel. We have and Corinne, this might be for you. This is from Shmaranda. Can European companies access the large U.S. government subsidies in the area of climate, clean tech, circularity? Have you heard of that? Or I kind of wonder if that's maybe limited to the U.S. country, but I don't know if you have experience of folks being able to access the U.S. government side as well.
No, I haven't. I've always found that you need to have some kind of subsidiary in the region and be doing some kind of trade there rather than being able to access it from here. Or,
I think that's right.
Yeah.
And then just for the audience, this is probably obvious, but just for the sake of the audience, I think a lot of it's like they want to see U.S. employment. They really do. Like the government is focused on employment. Can you hire more people out here to improve those numbers? And so if you're doing that part of it, then you might have a chance. But if you're literally just you have a too small office or you're not driving growth in the local region, they're probably loath to give you that kind of capital. So I'm just giving a macro government perspective out here. So. Awesome. Wow, we've covered, I can see the clock here. We've got a few minutes remaining. We've covered a lot of material, and appreciate both of you guys being so thorough and helpful. Oh, Olivier, thanks. You just shared some great salary insights. Oh, that's great. I know someone else on the panel or on the audience side, sales compensation by region. And unfortunately, you guys already have the data. So click on that link for those of you who are curious about that. I think many of you are very eager to learn about this.
That salary it's a great resource. It helps you really gather. It's been pretty based on our own experience. Like we manage like millions of workers across the globe, but so it really gives you a good idea of how much costs to hire mid-range, max range sales marketeers, a product technician in the US or in Europe or in Japan. So really use that. It's a free tool, so have fun with that.
Yeah, I would encourage actually the audience to, along with that link, also explore other parts of Deel. You actually have a lot of research and content. We actually use that for our portfolio when recommending certain talent strategies or advice. We kind of reference, hey, go to this page here on Deel, just because they've already done it. They have the data. You guys have a huge customer base, and so you've got the metrics and perspective there. So for a lot of the answers are there sitting on the web. But with that, I think we've done you guys, thank you so much for kind of sharing some great perspectives, got some really unique points of view, answering some, and then the audience has been fantastic. You guys have been really active. Great topics we've covered today. I'm going to kind of wave the hand and hand it over to Luc from CFO Connect, who will do the outro. But yeah, no, great to meet everyone today, and very grateful to be part of this. This was excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Yujin, and thank you to Corinne and Olivier for taking the time and really diving deep in this Pandora's box of a topic. And to echo what Yujin said, thank you to the audience who was watching and asked questions. So to Smaranda, to Nicholas, to Stefan, and all of you who asked questions, super sharp questions that I hope got you a lot of information for your expansion to the US. And so again, thank you to the speakers for tuning in from all over the world on this topic of expansion. So before you go, a few things. This session was recorded. It will be live, available to you after this session. We will send you an email with the recording. And also, Olivier had shared a few really cool resources from Deel. We will also be sharing in that email some other very relevant resources from Deel that you can check out on your own. And also, don't forget to check out Deel. We just shared the link in the chat. And finally, we put on these webinars for you, the community. So what's really important is that we get your feedback on a regular basis to making sure that we are making the best kind of experiences. Olivier, thank you so much for sending us out in beautiful style there. Great outro. So if you can please take 2 seconds to give us feedback, we'd be very appreciative, and it helps us to make better experiences for all of you. And so with that, thank you again to all the speakers, and we will see you on the next one, which is going to be CFO Connect Summit, our biggest event of the year. So we hope to see you all there, and thank you again to everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Bye.